You have instructional design questions. We discuss answers.
Hi, and welcome to our fourth installment of Design Your First ISD course. And as you remember in this series, we started with analysis. We went to design. What else did we do? We did something else there. I forget, but it was fun.
We talked through we talked through a lot of the elements. So like population analysis, we went deep into population analysis for this. And it was really important to be able to understand. And I know you hate that word, and I just said it. And every time I say the word understand, I think Chuck hates that word.
Yeah, well, I'm gritting. Right, I understand. It's okay.
Yes.
I understand your understand issue.
Yes, absolutely. Fine. Yeah. But the needs analysis is what we did, the NOP analysis. We did all of those preliminary analysis to be able to understand, to be able to figure out what I need to do with this course.
This is a development phase. And how did all those other three help you get to this phase before we get into it too deep? Did it actually help you?
It did.
It hindered you? Yeah.
I'll tell you where it really helped me was so when we started talking about the design phase, I created the design plan, and it was during that time that you said to me, I think this is more than one course. And I was like, oh no, please don't say that, right?
Every fledgling designer thinks it's one course.
Yes, but it actually turned out to be like 4 courses, 4 modules that needed to be done for this one overarching topic of how to moderate an online event, a panel discussion. And so the thing that helped me a lot was realizing that this really does need to be broken out into 4 parts. And not every organization is going to need all 4 parts. But this particular organization that I want to do this for does need it all 4 parts. So what I started to do was, with this development that we're going to talk about tonight, I developed one of the course modules, 1 out of the 4. And this is, I think, the most important module because it's the soft skills that surround moderating. And that, if you do not have those soft skills, the know-how to be able to interrupt people politely, to be able to create that dynamic flow of the discussion, to be able to not be the spotlight, but to be the person leading the discussion and shining the light on the panelists who are actually there. People are there to see them and listen to their expertise. So these are skills that I saw in the event in the summertime that I managed for this organization. I saw there was a small gap there that needed filling. And what I mean by that is, the moderators were not trained, and so they didn't have necessarily those soft skills innately. Some of them did, but some of them did not. And so in the future, if somebody is going to moderate these online events, they should have this training for these soft skills to be able to operate in a way that is professional. And you know,
soft skills are so hard to teach. I mean, even in a perfect world, because it's just... I think a lot of people can't get their head around it, can't get their hands on it. It's not a tangible thing like operating this or being able to do that. This is something that really incorporates what we are as people, what we are in our personalities, and how we address situations and how we talk and communicate with people. And it's such a complex thing. And I think the fact that you're taking on this whole notion of it is admirable. And I have to let everybody know I haven't seen this yet. So this is one of the things that's very cool about this series is I'm playing mentor, and I'm going to see this for the first time now too. So I'm looking forward to this. I know you've been working hard on it, and golly gosh, let's go. I can't wait.
And I will preface this whole thing by saying that because, so anybody who's out there who's learning to be an instructional designer or wants to create their first course and doesn't have the training as an instructional designer, get a mentor, because I personally want that feedback at this stage rather than when I'm trying to implement it, because obviously this is where I can change things. And I could be totally off the mark with what I have laid out here. I may not be touching on the skills that we need to be touching on, or I may have hit it right, the nail on the head. I have no idea. What I can say is I looked at it from the population analysis, the needs analysis, and where the gaps were in the observation of what I saw take place. And when just as a person an audience member who attends panels a lot, online panels, what I expect out of a moderator to be able to, there are certain topics that need to be discussed to be able to do this properly. And so I started with the bare bones of very quickly going into knowing who your audience is as a moderator, because if you don't know who your audience is, you don't know what they're expecting out of these panelists. So how are you going to lead a discussion if you don't know what they are even after? And
what does that sound like?
It sounds like knob analysis in a way, doesn't it? Right? I mean, a moderator having to do that.
This is what I love about instructional design. It puts its fingers in every single thing that you do. And a lot of the things that we do naturally, don't even think about it in terms of relationship. This is this whole notion of, okay, well, a population is a population. Analysis is analysis. And when you're talking about people and when you're talking about groups of people, it is no different from a design perspective than it is from the analysis perspective of someone who's going to be a moderator. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about this. Once people get their feet into this and they understand and appreciate that, it's just stuff I already do and know. I just didn't realize how I could implement this into something bigger and turn this into a better product because of the information that I kind of skirted over. Mm. So I think that the relationship between what you're teaching them and what you're doing as an instructional designer is incredibly important to recognize.
Yeah. So with that being said, what I want to do now is let me...
So everybody, I'm going to be looking off so I can see these slides too for the first time. So don't be surprised if I'm a little bit off camera.
Same with me. I'll be looking at my slides because to know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's kind of important, I guess.
Yeah. So, in this first slide, obviously, this is going to be an online course module, self-paced. People will be taking this at their own pace, and it will be completely online. There is not going to be any in-person instruction with this.
Perfect.
So this is all designed this way.
It's all in designer speak. This is async when you want to.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And it's important for this population to be able to have it this way because they're all over the world internationally. Yeah, we have people from Germany and Canada and all over the place. So this would work for them. So, Perfect. So going into it, I always like to be able to start modules personally when I just like to know, okay, little things, how much time am I going to have to
this is good.
Put to this?
Prep. Yeah, this is good.
Give them that indication of how much time they really need to put aside for this.
Perfect. And
then, of course, we have the module objectives so that they know what they're going to learn in this particular module. They're going to learn how to, I don't want to have to read verbatim here, but
no.
They're going to learn these module objectives here on the screen.
The only thing I would say is to put a header on there. At the end of this course, you should be able to do the following.
Yeah, so they can do, okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to take notes here, everybody.
Yeah, that's the way you do it. So we're just recording this, but this is a mentor session. Mm-hmm. So, I'll put the heading on there just so it defines what they are.
Perfect.
Little thing.
Yeah, but it's an important thing. All right, so the next slide is how to use the module.
Okay.
Because this is going to have some accessibility features involved in it for people who are hearing impaired, sight impaired.
Okay,
they're going to have the keystroke ability. If they don't have a mouse, they have the ability to use the keyboard. It's also going to have, it's going to be made for screen readers. So if somebody cannot actually read their screen, it will be read to them by a screen reader. So that will be built into the back end of this module. And so people who do not use a screen reader will not see or hear that aspect, but it's there for people who need it. And for any parts that are narrated, I will be using closed captions. So for anybody who's hearing impaired, they'll be able to get the gist of it.
So you really didn't do 508, but you got some 508 elements in here.
Right.
So
now when you say you really didn't do 508, what would be needed to do 508?
Well, you have to have certain font sizes. You have to do different things like that. I'm not a 508 expert, but I know that there's very specific things. So when you're talking about people accessing this that may have vision impairment or hearing impairment, a vision impaired person would have trouble seeing this, I think. And you can magnify the screen and do different things with the technology. But I think in terms of it being 508 compliant, that might be, I mean, you don't need to worry about it. But it's just an issue that designers face all the time is if they're working on a contract that requires 508 compliance, then these are the kind of things that you need to think about. So I think it's a minimum of, I don't want to say 18, but I think it's pretty big.
Oh, okay.
In terms of that kind of stuff. And, somebody's watching this as a 508 experts roll their eyes, but there is
comment
really,
if you are. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me how full of it I am. But I just know there's things like that. And as a designer, you don't have to worry about it for this. But there are many designers that only work in a 508 environment, and they can rattle this stuff off in a second.
All right. Well, that's very good to know because I don't have to do this for 508 compliance, but I like to be as accessible as I can because I know people who are hearing impaired and I know people who are sight impaired. And so I keep that. I'm very empathetic towards those needs and definitely want to be able to allow them to be able to access this just like anybody else can access this.
Perfect. So
this is the main menu. And this definitely isn't 508 compliant because I'm looking at this screen.
Well, I can't read it.
Well, we're looking at it also on a very small scale.
Yeah, because, I've got a 24-inch monitor.
Right. Like this is actually going to be, this will actually be much bigger on screen, but on this little small area that we have on our production equipment, it's not very big. But the topics, there are some topics here that the training is going to go through, and the person can click on any topic. So research your audience, prep the panelists, keep the flow, speak to the camera, interrupt politely, decide Q&A priority, stay present and engaged. And I know you're laughing. I know why you're laughing. I know why Chuck is. Because of the word politely. And I swear.
LY words. Never use LY words.
I was thinking, how can I say interrupt? I'm thinking it needs an adjective. So I would love your feedback on how you can actually put that as a topic. Is it just interrupt?
Facilitating as a pro.
Oh, that's great.
And the other general comment here is I think I would put all of these before I put my objectives because you don't want too much gray matter between your objectives where you start your course and the navigational stuff, which this is. So I think I do all the navigational first and then hit the objectives. And then if this is a menu they operate from, then this would go after your objectives.
It is. This would be this, and this will have, well, it says it here, but it's also going to have the narration of me narrating, telling them to click on any topic. They can go in any order. And they can click on the topic they feel like doing, but they have to go through all the topics in order to get to the quiz, which would then certify them if they pass.
Okay. Yeah. I think just a general rule, you want objectives right before they start.
Okay. All right. Very good. So anyway, this is where they would access all of those things.
Okay. I love the visuals. You always have great visuals.
All right, so this is the beginning of it. Assume that they went on research audience. It brings them to this topic.
Okay, so they're actually starting here.
They're actually starting the research audience part.
Yeah, now, this is great layout. This is very visually pleasing, which I know you would do because you're a professional at this. And this is something for instructional designers to think about too. If this is your first course and you're putting together things like Denise has here, you want to ask yourself, is this something that is pleasant to work with? Is this something that's pleasing to the eye? Is the way the graphics are related to other things like the text, and is the navigation consistent, and all those kind of things are the little parts of this design process that come naturally after you've been doing it for a while. And obviously Denise is a professional at visual representations, but all of us need to think about these things. So put yourself in the place of being a learner and you look at this and it looks pretty cool. I get that. Yeah, there's my Mac. And
I will give you a hint is I love I'm going to give a shout out to canva.com. I love canva.com. It's wonderful for people who don't have any graphic design experience. Yep. They have wonderful templates, and this template comes from canva.com. I mean, I tweaked it to my own desires.
This is not a paid endorsement.
No, it is not. No, it is not. But they have a free version of it, and they have a professional. Yeah. I did this with the free version.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
If somebody is if somebody's worried, like, I don't know how to design things, there are programs out there that can help you with that. And
should do that, definitely. So then we're going to navigate the bottom arrow.
Yep, so they would navigate to the next page. All right, so the next slide is researching your audience. So I wanted to make this an interactive type of module. So it's not just me lecturing to them, talking to them over a speaker on their computer. So they would actually have to look at the question and figure out which answer do they want, and so if they click on this particular answer, then they get a conditional response that says that's correct. Right?
You're so Skinner. You know what this is, right? This is machine learning. No, this is machine learning.
Okay.
I mean, this goes back to when there was before there was even any technology. And if it was in like a flip chart or something, you go through it. And if you didn't answer correctly, you couldn't turn the page.
Right.
It was a mechanical device that would lock it.
That's hilarious.
The one thing I don't see is a back arrow. So in navigational terms, you're not allowing them to go backwards. Is that true?
Oh, actually, what they can do, I forgot to put the M on this. In the how to use this module, there was a thing that said, click on the M in the left corner. It's going to be a button that they can return to the main menu at any time to get back to the actual main event. But you're right, for these particular slides, I have to put the back button.
I would have a back button.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good. All right.
Because you know what's going to happen when you're even though it is machined in the sense you have to get it right to move on, there may be times where you just want to go back and review it. Say,
yes.
Yes. So I would always recommend, unless there's some reason not to, I put a back arrow.
So if they click this one, it's sort of correct. And it gives them an explanation of what part is correct, what part maybe
sort of
isn't.
Correct.
Well, meaning like I'm trying. So.
Now, you know what I'm going to say now, don't you?
Well, it's not completely wrong, but it's not the best answer.
It's a kind of, sort of.
Well, all right. So the reason why is because you've been asked to moderate an online panel discussion about writing humor. You only have the event planner's contact info. You have no idea what the audience expects to get out of this discussion. To prepare, you should, and then so this answer is, the day of the event, ask the panelists for some overall information on the audience. While that's not completely wrong, it's not completely right, because they should do that as well, but they should research the audience ahead of time too. So it's sort of like a sort of correct answer.
I think from a cognitive point of view, it's either right or wrong, unless you're going to have something else there.
Yes.
So sort of correct, I would say, if you're going to do it this way, say several of these elements are important, but the missing link here is the fact you need to do it before.
Okay.
Or something like that. Because sort of correct, I would say, okay, well, good enough.
Yes.
Right?
This right here.
Remember, folks, I haven't seen any of this.
Is why having a mentor is so critical.
Well, if you disagree, say that. But I just think in terms of clarity of what's right and wrong, sort of, if I'm a sort of kind of person, I'm going to say good enough.
Could I start with, while not wrong, it's not enough to research. It's not enough to research your audience.
Well,
or should I put right up front, no, this is not correct, like incorrect. And then while not.
I think I would just be very careful with partial rights.
Okay. Should I put incorrect though? Like, would you say incorrect?
While this is good information, it's not adequate to do this. Something like that.
All right.
I don't think I would say sort of correct on anything. I mean, just because as a learner, if you were taking a course with me and you got a paperback and it said, well, this is sort of correct.
That would be confusing.
well, did I get an A or did I get a B?
Right. Am I going to pass? Am I going to, what's happening here?
You're sort of going to pass. Right?
Yeah.
So you remember, clarity is designer's best friend.
Okay.
Everything needs to be totally objective in terms of it just has to be exactly what you want it to be. And this is so close. And again, I'm picking on this because, we're doing this as an educational experience and whatever. But I think all designers, especially on your first course, make sure there's no ambiguity whatsoever. Make sure everything is totally clear from the perspective of the user or the learner. And if you go through this is where I always ask someone else to look at my work. Because things that make perfect sense to me make no sense to somebody else, or it's fuzzy. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if they know the content area. It has nothing to do with being a subject matter expert. It has everything to do about how clear did I make this? Mm-hmm. Is this something that people can follow and reasonably work through with some confidence that they have the information that they need?
Okay.
So this is not about your work. This is about design work in general. Mm-hmm. No ambiguity. Don't play games with learners. Give them what they need.
You're going to really do this one.
See, I can't even read the bottom. So
you're just going to, now you're just being silly, aren't you?
Oh,
this is definitely not the correct approach.
So we got Denise's sense of humor, which I think is, of course, I can appreciate now. But do you think the average learner, see, I mean, this is about how you set tone as a designer too. And it's okay.
And how do you, that's a good question, because how do you create that personality to it without going overboard and without ruining the actual thing?
And the one rule that I've always had in being a facilitator and in putting together courses is I leave humor out.
Okay.
Because my sense of humor, you've known me long enough that my sense of humor might not be your sense of humor. And when you're looking at a population that you don't know, each individual, somebody might look at that and you instantly lose credibility with that learner because they're not in the mood to be silly. They just want to get through the dang thing because it's a requirement.
Right. That's a really, really great point. And
now, not everybody agrees with me on this. I mean, there's some very clever ways to do this, and maybe this is, with your audience, this is appropriate and would be just, oh, well, that's Denise. She's, that's cool. I really like the way she does this. And all that's fine if it works with your population. But I think just as a general rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So if you don't have 100% of your population getting the joke or understanding the humor.
And it could be tough because it is an international audience. And so when you take different cultures.
Oh, I can tell you when you go from culture to culture.
Okay.
Sense
Point
of
taken.
Humor is out.
I will start at incorrect.
Sense of humor. So, I mean, how do you feel about it?
Well, I mean,
when you look at it abstractly, not as the person that created it and have ownership of this product, but as a designer.
You bring up a really good point about my sense of humor isn't your sense of humor, and your sense of humor is not mine. And if it is, I definitely do not want to lose credibility. And because people might be taking this training, maybe they don't know me. If they do know me, that's different. I think if it's like, if it's really a tight-knit organization that we all know each other, it's different, I think, because then you can have your personality because you know everybody. You know all the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. They know mm-hmm. you. But if it's going to be more general, I think I do agree with you. And you brought up that great point. And I didn't think of it that way. So
well, this goes back to being a designer. And if you're a designer, don't design it like you're going to teach it. And don't design it like you know everybody's going to take it. Because you don't, and you won't.
You just brought up a really good point. So designing this doesn't mean I'm facilitating this. It could mean I'm facilitating it, but I might not be facilitating this. If I want to hand this off to somebody else, my personality has no bearing whatsoever on this facilitator, and they might.
And the other part of that too, I mean, the cardinal rule for me with designers when they're working for me is you're not going to deliver this. You will have nothing to do with facilitation except maybe sitting in the back doing evaluations of how good the product is or bad or whatever. Never design something because you think you're going to facilitate it. And it really changes the perspective entirely on how you design. Because every time someone, at least the novice designers from my experience after a couple thousand of them, is what I see over and over again is they design something that they would like to take because they think they're the learner, but also as a facilitator, they can on the cuff make changes and do things creatively that really aren't allowed in terms of a design process and product. So if I'm a facilitator, I can get up and teach for an hour, and I can go anywhere that audience wants to go, and I can do this and I can do that. And I have ways to deal with people that fall asleep or people that have too many questions or, all the things a facilitator of any quality will be able to do. But as designer of a product that's online, this has got to be bulletproof.
Yep.
There has to be nothing that is what I would call a subjective slide of scalability of problems that could exist. So if you're handing it off and you have no control after it's designed, you will design a different product.
I can imagine that. And so that being said, admittedly, I designed this thinking I'm facilitating it.
Yeah,
and so,
of course.
That.
And this is the transition point from being a designer to being a professional designer. And we all go through this because when I started designing courses, I thought I was going to implement every one, and that was just nonsense. So I think a point of maturity, and this is where you're at because you're a new designer, this is a point of maturity where you turn that corner, where you realize that this product has to be bulletproof. It has nothing to do with the way that I teach. It has nothing to do with me as a learner. This is about a product based on the population, based on the content, and based on the best outcome for determining mastery. And when I talk to designers, when I'm interviewing people for positions or doing any of them, this is the one thing that I start to hit that button and see what I get back. And I will ask, do you design courses as if you're going to implement them? And if I hear back, oh, yeah, that's all I do, well, then I'm a little concerned. But if somebody says to me, I design as if I will never implement it, I want this product to be bulletproof, that's a point of maturation for a designer. And that's where you're at. And this is perfect.
Yes. I feel like I just learned like a huge ISD lesson right now.
Well, yeah,
truly
but that's how you learn it.
Yeah.
But that's how you learn it, right? I mean, it completely changes the way you design. It absolutely, totally, changes the way you design. So some of the courses you've taken with me, one of the things that I bring out is never design a course as if you are the learner. How many times did you see or hear that in my courses?
Absolutely, especially the adult learning class.
Yeah. So the next position then a designer takes is never design it like you're going to teach it.
All right. Well, that's a great lesson there. So the next topic, if they choose to select that from the main menu, would be prep the panelists. Okay. And like I said, there should be a little M in the corner here, but I forgot to put that on here. But
that's all right. You get navigation stuff. I mean, that's
this is once I lay it out in actually the program that I'll be using to lay it out. This is just a PowerPoint presentation, storyboarding at this point, so that I know kind of what elements I need, where I need them. So to prep the panelists, I wanted to use something where just sort of like a knowledge-based type of scenario-based training. So it's gonna really be narrated and or read, and it's just explaining about starting a dialogue with your panelists through email, through an online meeting, getting to know them behind the scenes so that they understand the goal, you understand the goal, and everybody's comfortable with each other.
Yep, that's good.
And they can decide together how they want this to really run and how it's going to benefit them.
Okay.
These slides are literally just going to run through. It's going to be knowledge-based so that they could read it or hear it so they understand what's necessary to do. The
only thing that I would make sure of is that it goes from simple to complex, that there is a scale up, right? And I don't know the content well enough to say that, but just as a designer, what I would say to you is just make sure you start at the entry point and you leave at the exit point, and make sure that in terms of Bloom, just philosophically or organizationally or foundationally, think about Bloom from the early taxonomy to the late taxonomy. So go across your 7 or how many ever you can use, in terms of this, and just make sure you start out with the very basic information and use that foundationally and then scale up and stack up from there. So this whole notion of how you build that, and I would just trust that to you as a subject matter expert. If I was simply designing this, I would just have a subject matter expert look at this and say, tell me this is correct, that we have listened to you, and that these things are in the sequence that allows us to present it in a way that's cognitively, structurally sound.
Okay, that's really great feedback. The next topic area is how to keep the discussion flowing. This is a really crucial point for moderators, because this is where a lot of them fell, is keeping that discussion going.
Oh, sure.
So this is going to be scenario-based training where they get to click on the scenario that is explained, and then they can choose which one they want to, which they would likely choose. So either one of these is okay. It's not that any of these are wrong. It's just going to show them what happens.
Just a comparison.
It's just a comparison to teach them how, if they transition to another panelist or if they ask a leading question. And so if they chose to transition to the next panelist, then they're going to have this, they can choose how would they proceed. And so they can choose this one or this one. And none of them are wrong. They're just going to go into an explanation of what that actually means. So if she chose the first one, it's an excellent choice, and it talks about the benefits of why that's such an excellent choice, what it does to the panelist, what it does to the whole, to the audience and such. So it gives them the knowledge in a different means, a different manner. It allows them to comprehend this information by seeing it actually play out in a scenario.
Okay, so that's a very sound instructional approach.
And so if they chose the second version, again, it would be just nurturing by saying excellent choice, and then it tells them why it's an excellent choice. So
could they go back, navigate back, and look at the other choice too?
Back to scenario. So going back to the scenario, then. Or
could you say, have a summary slide if you don't have a summary slide? And say, choice A was this, choice B was that. If you didn't, whatever your choice was, this is what the other choice would look like. So that they still have the background information.
If they went back to the scenario, then they would be able to get to the next choice, which is ask Sarah a question. And then it would go through why that's a good question, why that's a good thing, what it does.
Because I think you don't want to limit people's ability to navigate through the different options.
Yep.
Even though they chose one or the other, if you can either do a summary after or allow a navigation or suggest a navigation or something like that. Because neither one of them, I assume, is incorrect. It's just a difference.
It's just a different way. It's a way of giving the student ideas of how they can handle a scenario like this. So they have 4 different... And I would think you
would want them to know both, right? Or all of them.
Yeah. Yes. I think I need to rework this slide so that it's not like click on a scenario you likely choose.
You don't want it to be a one and done. You want it to be...
I want them to actually click on both of them to see how they both play out.
Or you could just simply move through them sequentially. Let's look at 2 scenarios. Do one and then go to the next one.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay.
Because I don't want to eliminate content that you might want them. Because if their comfort level is such that they choose one that's more comfortable with them, then they've learned nothing because right?
Absolutely. I really like that idea of, all right, let's run through this scenario and then let's run through this next scenario.
Yeah.
And this way they're able to see how each scenario plays out. Okay. All right, I like that. The next one is speak to the camera. This is something that a lot of people have a hard time with. We do that in this
Especially
right here.
Me.
I mean, it's not an easy thing to get used to because you feel like you're not actually watching things play out. Like if you're in a Zoom online event, you naturally want to look at everybody, right? But when you're doing that, you actually take it away from the audience. You're not present with the audience, and the audience.
Somebody taught me once, and I found this to be an excellent exercise, is to put a dot on a mirror and stare at that dot for 5 minutes. So imagine that being the camera. I mean, if you're in a studio situation and you're going from one camera to another, you look for the red light. But in terms of most of the things that this audience will be looking at, Just have them do the mirror exercise.
I like that. I never heard of that. And I think that's a great
that way, all the stuff that's in the mirror, you have to ignore it. So whatever your background is, you can't really look at your face or anything else.
Nothing.
Stare at that dot for 5 minutes and do that every day, a couple of times, and then you'll get to the point of having a comfort level of not moving your head and keeping your eyes focused on one point with all the other stuff that's going on around you.
Yeah, and it is a skill to learn. It really is. It's definitely, it's not a comfortable thing to be able to do that. But it's really important because speaking to the camera, now here, they'll run through, like, it's just going to have a different image, but it's going to be a point. And it's just a visual different, it's just a visual. So when they're on this one, it's going to be green. Imagine yourself, just going through the content. Again, I'm not going to go through that, but it brings them through each point and it changes the picture.
Oh, that's good.
So that they can see.
See, your visuals are tremendous. You do such a great job of this.
And it's really because it's what I want to see in another train. Like I'm a very visual person. I like to see color.
Really? You're a visual person?
I like to see things that are clean and not too cluttered. But it's not an easy thing you want to put everything on your screen.
To be able to do good visual design is an art and it's a talent. And so many people think they can do it until they go to do it. And that is not my skill. I don't do those things well. I recognize good and bad because I've just had to do it so much, but I cannot do it. And that's really a tremendous skill that you bring to this. The only thing I would caution is don't get married to it. So whatever you produce, look at it very objectively.
Well, I can tell you I learned that just today, as a matter of fact, with a project I was doing for my job.
I can't imagine.
Putting together a presentation to higher ups about starting an Instagram account for our division. And I put together a presentation and, of course, somebody on my team, I had them look at it and they're like, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. And I'm just like, darn it. But I understood, it's good. And then as I made the corrections, I'm like, it does look better. Okay. It is better. And you have to be open to that critique. You have to be open to that feedback.
Everybody has to have someone that will be honest with them.
Yes.
Now, you may not agree with them. They may not understand what you're trying to do. Yeah. There can be all kind of issues with that. But you really need somebody who's going to tell you the truth.
And you need to be that person who can hear the truth, because if you're closed off from hearing that feedback and the truth, but seriously, if you're closed off from that, what happens is people are afraid to give you their feedback, and then you do lose out.
They'll either tell you what you want to hear or they'll be nasty.
And that's just not a way to conduct. No, it's not useful at all. No.
Yeah.
All right, so interrupt politely.
Okay.
Facilitate as a pro.
Yeah, do a YouTube channel. You learn how to do that.
True.
Yeah. Everything you're showing me, I think is tremendous, Denise. And my little comments are just, design speak stuff. It's not,
this is, again, just like an interactive where they click on one tip, they get the explanation of a tip for interrupting politely or facilitating like a pro.
Do they have to do each tip before they can move on?
They have to, yes. And you know what? That is part of the conditional advanced, what do you call it? Advanced.
Yeah, it's the way you code it. I get you.
Exactly. But I just want to make sure that I put that into my Captivate when I do it.
Because you don't want to waste a single good thought.
Okay. So they've got to run through each one of these in order to move on to the next.
I think so. And don't make it a choice. Make it, let's look at 3.
And then 3, and then, and so it's just another tip that they get. And then you've got manage Q&A. This is, now that you talked about going from simple to complex, this becomes more complex, like managing the question and answer, because this is where you as a moderator need to determine which questions coming in from the audience are relevant to the discussion. You also need to manage if every question is coming in for Ashley and not for Brianna and not for Tom, you have to be able to figure out kind of like a game plan. We can't ask Ashley every single question, even though all of them are coming in for Ashley. We have to be able to direct questions to other people. And if you can't, if there are no questions coming in for a specific panelist, to have canned questions ahead of time to be able to address each panelist fairly, because each person should have a chance to speak equally.
Yeah. Be able to rotate. Yeah,
exactly.
Gotta rotate.
Yep. So this particular one, it's going to be the same type of a situation where they have to click on the tips.
All of this is fine. All this is great.
All right. I think this is.
But I would make them do each one if it was me.
All right. I like that. That's very good feedback. I think that the Q&A should be the last one based on what you were saying with the complex. I think stay present and engaged is not necessarily a complex.
Yeah,
I think that's
I think the most difficult one was one we just saw.
I think this one is probably one of the easiest, really. It's one of the most common sense. It's just it probably should be at the beginning, actually. So glad you said that.
Yeah.
And this is just going to be a placeholder for a video. I plan on just speaking to, I plan on speaking to the camera about this particular item. So I think that. So
you're going to summarize the whole chapter?
Yeah.
Module.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's good.
They get back to the main menu after all of the green checks of all the topics. Once they've done all the topics, then this thing comes up where go to the quiz, where they can either review items again or they go to the quiz. So they can click on any of these topics.
You're not going to like what I say next.
Okay.
Prepare yourself.
Hold on. He told me to prepare myself, okay.
I think they should do the evaluation after each module.
Okay. All right.
Just from the perspective of you have 7 things. I did the first thing. Now I did 6 more. Now you're going to give me a quiz?
Okay.
So in terms of what I would call authentic mastery or determination mastery, the less confusion you have cognitively when people go into evaluation, more likely you are to have the things that you want to happen in evaluation. So what do you want to have? First, you want to determine mastery, of course. That's obvious. The second thing you want to do is reinforce the positive, reinforce the correct. And you do that through a quiz or an evaluation. I don't even think I call it a quiz. Maybe
test your skills. Test your knowledge. Knowledge check. Yeah,
I think that's better because quiz and test and anything like that immediately frightens some people.
Yeah. Well, it does me.
So
I'm not
test
good at
anxiety is real.
Okay.
So I think that the more benign you can make that. But I think if you do it after each one, then you reinforced and move to a stronger place in long-term memory.
Okay.
So I mean, you get it there, but it's certainly in short-term memory, it's going to be a lot more able to reside there for a while. But I can assure you, after 7 of these, if you wait to the end, your results are not going to be as good.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
And really what you want to do, it's not about determining mastery as much as it is reinforcing the points that you want them to work from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can only do that 1 chunk at a time.
Okay.
2 chunks, not so good. 3 chunks, not so good. 7, forget it.
All right. With the knowledge checks, I don't want it to be like, you failed, you can't move on. Like, they get to retry it until they actually get it right. And then
I mean, if I was going to program this, I would say, okay, you got these right. Let's look at the ones that you might want to look at again. And then go back through the ones that didn't get correct. Say, here's the correct answer for this. And not that they're graded on it, but that what you want them to do when they leave that module is have the correct information.
Okay. Yep.
That's what really counts.
Okay.
It's not the grade, because this is, you're not going to get a license in this.
No.
So what you want, your end product needs to be something that reinforces the positive teaching moments and points of your objectives that you want them to be able to retain.
Okay.
That's what's important. So if you do, okay, let's look at these, and here's the correct answer. And I wouldn't even use correct. Here's the answer that best supports this question, or more in some ways kind of benign. And in that way, they have instant feedback. It's not a negative. It's just a reinforcement. When they leave, they will have all the correct information. They will have what you wanted them to learn.
Yeah.
And that's pretty benign.
I like that. So these next slides, based off that feedback, are going to change then, because I think I had it. Well, yeah. So we're not gonna do this. So
I would take quiz and tests and all.
We're just not gonna do that. And then this is more like a congratulations. So Perhaps this is what happens when they are done all 7 modules. Congratulations. And I just kind of threw this link up there, certified to moderate an online panel, but it's more like, congratulations. Now you have all the information you need to moderate an online panel.
I think I would put something similar at the end of each module.
Okay.
And the reason I say that, and I always say this in project management and everything else, celebrate every victory.
Okay.
So you go from doing the module, you go through the questions, you've now been given the right answers, correct answers. You've now completed it. That's great. Congratulations.
Let's go on to the next topic. Yeah. Okay. Then when they're done with that last topic, I love that. I think that positive reinforcement works for me, that's for sure.
Well, I just think if you're apprehensive about any of this, let's have a victory. Let's have a first victory. Okay. Because they have a victory even if they didn't get any of them correct, because you're going to give them the correct answers.
Because I want them to walk away confident. That's the most important thing. As a moderator, they need to be confident. And they're given the tools here and the knowledge to be able to be confident. Okay. Yep. That's good. I like that a lot. And so that last page, after they've completed that final one, they just get to a landing page like this. That congratulations, now whatever. I'll say something, and then to end this module, click here.
Yep.
I like it. Okay. Good. This is amazing feedback, and it's so useful, of course. And I learned a lot. There were a lot of light bulbs.
So what did you learn? Let's cap before we get out of this video, because I think this is important stuff. And you're such a good designer, and your instincts are so great, and you have such a calm and pleasing personality.
Well, some might say that.
But some of this, was probably a surprise to you. You didn't think I would say some of these things.
Yeah.
And I think the relationship between a mentor and someone they're working with, you have to find that balance between honesty and supportive behaviors, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's so critical. As
my friend Judge Hensley used to say to me all the time, he says, Chuck, I love you, right? And then I would get flattened by a semi because I'd mess something up. But I really think it's important, if you're watching this, to learn to design courses. If you're watching this, you have lots of experience. Maybe it's second nature to you, but anytime that you work with someone and you want to make their product better and make them better and reinforce the positives and make them feel confident and secure about what they're doing, you want to always frame things with this notion that this is us working together to make this a little bit better. Just let me share my experience with you, because I made these mistakes too. And I did. I made every single mistake. Yeah. And that's the only way that you get to this point. So the fact that you were good-natured about it and that was all good, I think that's important to think about in terms of being mentored and being a mentor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I've learned so much from you through all of these videos, but this particular right here, this whole development segment is just crucial. You taught me already. I've learned to make sure that I'm designing as a designer, not as the person facilitating or not as the learner. That is a big light bulb moment, because it's not something I considered. I know I've heard it, but it's not something I considered.
But it didn't sink in, right?
It didn't sink in until now.
It sinks in when you do this.
It just sank in. It just sank in.
Oh, that's normal.
You do not use humor, because as a designer, I can't push my humor on somebody else, because I'm probably not funny. Well, so it's just not. But it's not professional, and it's not something that is generalized enough to be able to hand off to somebody. That was another light bulb moment.
Well, I mean, there's all these things. It goes back to designer neutrality. You don't have a political opinion. You don't have a personality opinion. Organizational opinions. I don't have opinions. I'm a designer. Yeah. I'm here to give you a product.
Yeah.
And I stay away from all that stuff. And humor, I've just seen it go south so quick.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It just ruins everything that follows. So that's just my experience.
Yeah, well, I don't take that lightly. That's for sure. And, I loved your concept of making it a victory. That is something that's going to stick with me. Make it a victory for people every step along the way, because that's when, if someone's feeling deflated or frustrated or worse, like they just feel like they're, a failure, that's the worst. I would never want a learner to feel that way.
No,
and the best way to combat that is to celebrate those victories. That was the biggest light bulb moment of this.
And you have to do that. You have to do that.
Yeah.
So this is great. So I think this is a great fourth video in this series of Design Your First Course. I think that you have provided an incredible product that we'll tweak a little bit, make it a little bit better. But the basic product is sound. It would work untouched. It will work a little better when it's tweaked up. But I think the message for all designers here is get a second opinion from someone who has enough experience in these things to be able to give you valued feedback about things that might be better. And of course, you can agree or disagree and do what you want to. But I think the singular voice roaming around the designer's head is sometimes the most dangerous thing that you could have. You really need to get some feedback and get some reflection. And also, it's a good opportunity to build relationships too. Because if you want to have professional relationships with people that maybe have more experience than you or have worked in areas that you're not familiar with, this is a way to start to build that bridge. And I hope this is important to you, Denise, and I think that anybody in a similar situation, and certainly if you're taking courses in instructional design, whether it's a for-credit or non-credit environment, if you're not getting mentoring and if you're not getting really reliable and accurate and very speedy feedback on what you're doing, then I think you need to keep looking, because you could do a lot better with what you're getting in terms of education.
Indeed. This has been really insightful, as usual. And I want to thank you, Chuck, for all of those insights. And for everyone listening in, viewing this, thank you for being here with us. And please put your questions in the comments section, and we'll get back to you on those. And I really appreciate you being here with us and being part of this journey.
Thanks.